Welcome to the Spherity podcast season, Product Passport Pioneers. My name is Susanne Guth-Orlowski, and I'm Chief Innovation and Solutions Officer of Spherity. Today, we're speaking with Michele Galatola, Senior Policy Officer of the European Commission, DG GROW. Welcome, Michele. It's lovely to have you here in the show.
Hello, Susanne. It's very nice to be here with you to talk about the future of DPP.
Wonderful. Before we talk about the DPP, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background and what was your journey to the position you have today?
Yeah, so as you said, my name is Michele Galatola. I'm Italian by nationality, and my background is in science. I studied environmental sciences and I have a doctorate in life cycle assessment. So sustainability has always been at the core of my interest. Before joining the Commission, I was working for ENEA, which is the Italian National Energies for Environment and Renewables. And then I joined the Commission in 2005 in the DG Research. So it's already 17 years that I'm working for the Commission. I've been 5 years in DG Research, then 10 years in DG Environment, and then since 2019, I'm now in DG GROW. And in all this time, my core business has been to bring sustainability at the core of policy making in Europe, through research first, and now through policy development and policy implementation. So now before in DG Environment, I was mainly leading the development of the environmental footprint methods, EF and OEF methods. So I've been doing that for 10 years.
So such as the PEF, which has now been defined? Okay.
Yeah. That was I'm considered the father of PEF.
Oh, okay.
Within
I
the
didn't
Commission.
know that.
And now in DG GROW, I've been asked to again make sure that our product-related policies have a strong sustainability connotation, environmental sustainability, and in particular, I've been part of the team who has been developing the recently adopted Ecodesign legislation, now called ESPR, Ecodesign for Sustainable Products Regulation. And in that team, I was dealing with the life cycle assessment component and the digital product passport. So together with colleagues from other DGs, we have been shaping and this very important element. I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I think very important element of this future legislation.
I obviously also think it's a very important element. Otherwise, we wouldn't do the podcast here. And I think we have a lot of listeners that think the same and in the same direction. Now you've mentioned already that you've worked with other people in the Commission to work on this. Can you remember how did it all start working on the DPP?
Yes, basically when we were reviewing the existing Ecodesign in trying to implement the political guidelines that were included in the Green Deal and then in the Circular Economy Action Plan, that are the policy flagship initiatives from Commissioner von der Leyen, we started to look at what were the barriers and the challenges in order to get where we want to be in the future. Because for us, our let's say our mantra is that in future only sustainable products should be placed on the European market. So we started to ask ourselves, okay, what is missing? And there were, of course, a number of things where we thought that our policy could be improved. And one clear element was related to the transparency of value chains and availability of reliable information for different users. And then we started asking ourselves and checking with the member states and with the industry stakeholders if the time was mature enough to start thinking of making all the different pieces of information that were already existing more interoperable, in order to get to the point where when you need information about a product, being it about its production process, its sustainability features or other elements, then you could have a single entry point in order to obtain this information. And that is where the concept of the product passport is born. And due to its ambition and complexity, it was kind of natural that this effort was taken over by a multiple number of services in the Commission. So it's not DG GROW only or DG Environment only, but they are DG Environment, DG GROW, DG Ener, DG Taxu, DG Connect, the Secretariat General, DG Trade. So there are a number of DGs that are working closely together in order to deliver this new tool. And also this by itself was kind of something new in the commission, especially with the commission President von der Leyen, but also with the previous commission. The amount of integration between different DGs has been increasing more and more, and this is really, we think, a much better way of delivering the needs, to satisfy the needs that European citizens deserve.
Yeah. Now the main goals of DG Grow are kind of a bit of different than to DG Connect and DG Environment. So what is the main goal that you're driving and your impact is here?
I would say that the goal is the same, but it's the angle or our contribution that is complementary to the one of other DGs. Because the goal is to improve the quality of life of our citizens and to make our companies more competitive and to ensure a growth that is sustainable. So we do that by integrating our competencies in terms of how value chains work, how supply chains work, how industry works into the objectives of our policy, in order to have policies that are balanced when it comes to what we ask to industry to do, to balance, red tape, to balance administrative costs, and to balance that also with incentives. The environment comes from the angle of ensuring that we are really looking at the impacts that are more relevant in order to reduce them. DG Connect comes from the angle of ensuring that innovation is taken into account, and then all the possibilities that ICT tools offers are properly embedded in the way we do policies. And I could list all the different DGs. So it's the same objective, but our contributions are complementary from that perspective.
Wonderful, thank you. So first of all, you already mentioned the Ecodesign for Sustainable Products Regulation, short ESPR. It's out, it has been issued in March this year. So congratulations again for this obviously not easy task to launch it. And this is such an important path for us going forward. Now it's been launched 5 months ago. What are the concrete next activities to implement it, or what's the Commission driving?
Yes, it's important to keep in mind that this is a proposal from the Commission. So the way it works in Europe is that the Commission put forward a legal text as a proposal, but then there are two important other institutions that need to intervene and improve the text. This is the European Council, so where the 27 member states are sitting, and the European Parliament. So basically what is happening, and it will happen for a number of months to come, is that these two institutions also look at the legal text and they propose improvements from their perspective. The Council on one side, the Parliament on the other side. Once they have finalized this process of presenting amendments, the three institutions sit together in the so-called trialogue, and there we need to agree on the same text, because it is that same text agreed by the three institutions that then will become the legislation that companies and citizens will be faced with. All this process that is called co-decision takes time that is proportionate to the complexity of the legislation that is proposed.
Of course.
ESPR is a very complex one, so we expect that this process will probably last for at least 18 months or 24 months, which means that in reality, the products regulated under the new Ecodesign legislation will probably see the market around end of 2024 or 2025. This is the timeline that we have had. Now, does that mean that we as a Commission do nothing until then? Well, unfortunately or fortunately, the answer is no, because there are a lot of activities that we need to do in order to get there prepared. So, for example, when it comes to the passport as such now exists as a concept, but now we need to make it operational. So to make it operational, we first need to build what we call the DPP system. So it's everything that is behind the curtain, so all the IT protocols, the standards that will be necessary. So there is an important preparatory work, the registry and other things that we need to do, so that when the times come that the legislation has concluded its itinerary, then we are ready to implement and to add the passport to a real existing product. And then there will be other things that will happen in terms of preparatory work, consultation with stakeholders, both in Europe and international. So, it's a lot of things that will happen that you don't see. They are not maybe so visible, but that keep us very, very busy.
What is visible is the new project called CIRPASS. It's a European funded project. What are you expecting from the project, or what are your goals, or what do you think this project can bring us?
Yes, so the CIRPASS is a project that has not started yet. We are signing the last agreements, and we hope to have a kickoff meeting in early October. And it is a quite short time project, so it will work and deliver in 18 months. So it's quite condensed in terms of time span, but that is also consistent with our timeline. And basically, this CIRPASS brings together a very important number of stakeholders coming from different area related to the DPP. So we have industry, we have standardization offices, we have academia, we have an important number of players. And these people will be grouped together, and basically this task is the following. We gave them three supply chain, that is batteries, textiles, and ICT. What we are asking them is to imagine how the DPP system will have to work in the future. So they will gather together, they will discuss, okay, there are these existing standards, this standard does not exist, we need to have them. So they have to design the system and test it in theory. So it will not be a real test on products, but they have to prove the concept and inform us about what they would suggest as the optimal design for the DPP. So it's not about building a product, it's not about building a prototype, it's not about building a database. None of that is a scope, but is more to support the designing process of the DPP. And this will be one of many sources of information for us. So we will have the CIRPASS, but then we will have all the work that we will be doing with the standardization organizations, because we will issue a standardization mandate. So we'll ask the standardizer to adapt existing standards or develop standards in order to fit with the DPP criteria, but then we will have also consultation, dedicated consultation with stakeholders, with member states. So it's a various number of sources that all together will feed our own thinking, so that in the end we can come forward with a design that is really what we need in order to deliver the objectives of the passport.
When we read the ESPR, some people said that they're kind of missing a date when really the legislation is being implemented or mandatory for certain product categories. How do we get to a secondary legislation that is really in place and mandatory, for example, for textiles? Or can you explain which product categories come first, and what do you think when the secondary legislation will be on the market? And how do we get to a mandatory date as we have it for the batteries? The batteries is 1st of January 2026, but for others we don't have anything. How do we get there?
Yeah, partly already hinted to this in my previous reply when I say that around end of 2024 or 2025, we will see the first products bearing a digital product passport. Because as I explained, we need to first conclude the co-decision process, and then we can start developing the secondary legislation, because we need a legal basis to do that. In terms of which products will have a passport, I think that is important to make it, to say it clearly, that the passport is not for everything. So for example, all the food, feed and pharmaceutical is out of scope of ESPR, so they will not have a passport, or at least not a passport under the ESPR. We are also working, for example, on food related activities. Maybe so in future there will be also passport for food, but not stemming from the ESPR. Then when we look at what remains, all the other products that are not food, feed and pharmaceutical, the Commission is preparing a working plan. So basically we are now looking at all the different products, looking at their environmental impacts, looking at their circularity potential, looking at the improvement potential. So based on this, we will make a list of priority products. So where we will start regulating, and then we will go down. And of course, we will consult member states and stakeholders on this towards the end of this year. So once we have defined and agreed on the working plan, those are the products that will be regulated. What does that mean? It means that in 2025, we will not find thousands of different products that will have the passport, but we will start with few selected products, the highest impacting, and then with time we'll add more and more. So in the long term, we will have many products having the passport, but we will have to start, little by little and then adding up with time.
Okay, but for me to summarize, first of all, you're going through the ESPR, then you would, out of that, create secondary legislation, for example, for textiles, and that will be available around 2025, and that will carry a date by which textiles DPPs are mandatory.
The legislation, probably textile, we haven't decided the groups,
Yeah,
but
it's just an example.
Textile number, we can say that textile will be one of them because we have also made an explicit commitment in the new textile strategy that we will have secondary legislation textile. So it's good to mention that as an example because we know it's a real one. The legislation, the secondary legislation that we'll probably put forward in 2025 will either already have the passport, so it will be an immediate starting validity, or depending where we will be with the standardization process, because that also takes time, we may say by a certain date, the passport will have to be available.
Okay,
it all depends, on the synchronization of timing between different activities.
Of course, now that I understand. Okay, and once the secondary legislation is there, does it need a local implementation of all the EU countries?
No, because this is a regulation. And the advantage of being a regulation is that it is immediately applicable in all member states. And as it is a regulation based on internal market rules, it also means that it is equally applicable to all products that are imported from outside Europe and are placed on the European market. So the rules will be the same independently from where the product is manufactured or where the product is sold in Europe, of course.
Of course. Okay, super. Thank you. What do you need from other organizations, from standards, from maybe consortia, from other companies on the market for the DPP to be successful?
Yeah. One of the key features of the DPP to be successful is interoperability, because our objective as a commission is to create a system that can work within a single value chain, but also vertically through different value chains. That means that, for example, the existing systems that are currently developed by private organizations, they need to start talking among themselves and with us in order to find this common ground for interoperability. We need member states to be very collaborative in order to let us know, for example, what are their needs for the DPP when it comes to market surveillance activities or custom operational controls. We need the standardization bodies to really get on board and fully committed to deliver high quality as they usually do, but also in a time frame that is compatible with our policy cycles. We need industry associations to start working together with the members, because the passport will include information that is coming from different parts of the supply chain, even parts of the supply chain that are outside of Europe. So it is extremely important that they start doing an action of also a pedagogical action among the members to prepare them to the fact that they will be requested to provide certain information that will be essential for a product to be placed on the market. So this is also something that we expect from them. So as you see, it's also there, like for the Commission, is a team exercise that will be successful the more different stakeholders come on board with the idea that this is an example where everybody can win. It's really a win-win solution for everybody. If we design it properly and we implement it properly, it will bring benefit to consumers, it will bring benefit to industry, it will bring benefit to authorities, it will bring benefit to companies that will be able to create new markets and new business opportunities.
Speaking of business opportunities, I mean, the digital product passport, first of all, will be an investment for the companies to comply to the regulation. And I think, though, it has a lot of benefits around it. What additional benefits do you see apart from being compliant to the regulation?
Before getting to the benefits, I want to maybe reflect on the thing that we are not creating something from zero. We are starting from data that are already existing and often already required by the legislation. So it is true that for sure companies would have to make an investment, but in many cases, this is information that they already have. It will be more about systematizing this information into an IT framework that is maybe different from what they have. But in many cases, I mean, if you think to all the products that already are bearing a barcode or a QR code or other ways of moving information on the supply chain, at the end of the day, the passport is not that different from this concept. For sure, there will be investment, and we will support that through capacity building projects for member states, but also for developing countries and through other form of incentives that we will be discussing with member states. Now, coming to the benefit, we have seen even recently with the pandemic crisis or with the war that we are unfortunately experiencing between Ukraine and Russia, that is extremely important, I would say strategic for company to be fully aware of what is happening along their supply chain, where the suppliers are located, what kind of products they are producing, what are the characteristics. Because the resilience, which is one of the key words for our European society, is based on understanding what is happening before you. Not only understanding what your customers needs, but also understanding, again, as I said, what is happening in the pieces of the value chain before you. And before, the companies were not so much interested into that. Because they had no direct reason to be interested. But now we are seeing that having understanding, transparency about what is happening for them is, in many cases, a matter of survival. So this is something, it is not the value that the passport with time will provide them. Now, we don't have to overcharge the expectations. It's not that the passport is the silver bullet that will solve all the problems that we have in Europe. And that's why it's also important to understand that in terms of what kind of data will be included in the passport, we want to be cautious, start maybe with a limited number of key data, and then with time to add more and more to get to the ideal situation of a passport where you find everything.
So basically, you're saying that the main additional benefit will be transparency about their own value chains, helping them to get more resilient in the industry today. So I think we could also call it that they have a better risk management or third-party risk management with this, simply because they have more insights about where their material comes from. I think raw material is one of the very crucial parts. Also, what actually do you think is the most crucial part that they need to look at? Is it raw materials, or what do you have in mind there?
It depends from product group to product group. I don't think we can generalize. It could be raw material. It could be the source of energy that is used, for example.
True. Yes.
If you think that, all the question again with gas from Ukraine and
absolutely,
with the climate change challenges, is the interest of stakeholders and investors and insurance in your carbon footprint. I mean, this can be often related also to the energy sources. If you go beyond the strictly environmental domain, we could start thinking about the potential use of the passport in future, not now, to deal with things related to due diligence, for example, and forced labor and other sort of information that also somehow are related to the risk profile of a company. So I think the more you think about it, the more potential benefits you can identify.
Absolutely, and especially when we talk about risk scores and social impacts, then we're very quickly with ESG criteria, which is also going to be mandatory for some companies to declare. And I think maybe it has not been really in depth kind of constructed the way, but this information should also be part of the digital product passport. Of a product, maybe kind of an attribute of a company, can also be the ESG score. So I think that also several legislations are kind of, I don't know how to say that, wrapping into each other. So they're kind of overlapping from their needs, where also the product passport can actually be a vehicle to provide compliance to those regulations.
I think that is where we will land in the medium term. In the short term, as I explained, we need to start from a small, more focused exercise, prove the concept, make a trial and error, because this will be a trial and error. We cannot imagine to have the perfect system from day one.
Yeah, that's very wise words. And I think we have to accept that there are errors on our way, and where we try. And, you know, as soon as we run into the first error, we shouldn't shut down everything again. It's kind of sometimes a little bit European or German, I would say. So we have to keep on track here. I'm looking forward to all those errors we make, to learn out of them. The European Commission is mandating that the DPP will be implemented as a decentralized approach or decentralized system. Why was this decision taken?
I think there are multiple reasons. The first reason is related to the fact that we think that information should stay where the information belongs. So a lot of information is belonging to the companies that are manufacturing there, and there are issues related to the security of that information, the confidentiality of the information, cybersecurity attacks, and other things that can be better managed if the information is stored there and is not moved to a big centralized database. There are also reasons related to costs, to management costs of big data. I mean, the DPP could become a huge, immense database if you think about all the transitions that happen every day for products that are on the market. So that is not the I would say the mission of the Commission to manage a huge, enormous centralized database. We have some examples of smaller databases that are already quite difficult to manage. So we thought that in this case, it would be better, also in view of the new technologies that are developing. And we see that there are new potentials that the ICT offers us. So we thought that looking at the pros and cons of the options, that for this specific case, the decentralized solution would have been the one working best. It's a primer. We have never tried that in Europe. As far as I know, it's never been tried in the world. So, but we are happy to be the first one to start if this will deliver what we think it will.
I'm personally very convinced that this approach is the only possibility how to tackle the complex value chains that we have around the globe, and to actually get the right information out of there. But that's obviously where I come from. This is my conviction. For the DPP, when you look at it, some of the articles that are in the regulation have been added for customs because there is a registration needed from their side. Doesn't that contradict a little bit to the general requirement to store the information in a decentralized way?
It could seem so, because indeed the registry is the only element of centralization that we have. But it's not so much a contradiction in terms of objectives, it's rather the unavoidable decision based on pragmatic reasons, in the sense that I will explain. Currently, all the custom operator offices that we have in Europe are interconnected through an IT system that is called Certex. And this IT system, which is very efficient because it's a in real-time transmission of information between the different offices, that requires a centralized database in order to work. Because through this system, our colleagues in the customs are able to do automatic checks. And if you think about the enormous amount of products that travel around Europe, you need to have a certain amount of automatic checks. You cannot do only in-person checks. So in order to add to the automatic checks in future, the check that a product has a passport, and that passport is really corresponding to that product, we have to create this centralized registry that will only be accessible to market surveillance and custom authorities operators, so will not be accessible to other parties. And that will be there in order to allow this automatic system to carry out its work. So that's the only reason why we have this tiny centralized component.
So I think for me, it's not really a contradiction, because I think the information can still be stored decentrally, but different actors, not only customs, can then, get to the decentralized information, and collect it because they receive an identifier of the product, for example, and then they can collect the information and use it for the internal use. I did do another interview with Mario Malzacher from Circular Fashion, and they, for example, they need to cache some of the product passport information as well on their local devices because they do sorting machines, and the sorting machine needs to decide very quickly if they can use the textiles again or not. So they're caching some of the information. I think several use cases maybe will serve themselves with the digital product passport information and then do their purpose. So I think that the customs kind of is maybe one purpose, but storage of the information can still be decentralized.
The information will be decentralized in terms of storage. I mean, I want to make it clear, in this registry, we will not store all the information, including the passport. That will remain decentralized. The registry will only include the 3 identifiers. So the product identifier, the facility identifier, and the operator identifier. These are the only 3 information that will be stored centrally. All the rest will remain decentralized.
Yeah, and that's probably an important differentiation to make. Thank you for that detail. So now kind of you have the vision in front of you, I'm sure, how the DPP will develop. Which hurdles do you see on its way?
I think, of course, there are the technological hiccups that we can always have, because what I'm realizing more and more is that to harmonize existing IT system is extremely complex, much more than harmonizing policies that are only existing on paper. So that is because, as I said, we want to reuse to the maximum extent possible existing information. We already have databases like April, like Skip, like other databases, and we want to reduce the cost for businesses by reutilizing the information that is there. And when you start looking at it from the IT perspective, it's less straightforward than when you say it. So this is a potential hurdle that I see. Then I also see potential hurdle in terms of finding a common ground where we are able to design a DPP that is satisfying all the different interests that sometimes are contradicting. Because, I mean, saying that we want full harmonization, it also means that we are not willing to use proprietary solutions. And for those who have already developed the proprietary solutions, of course, they need to find a different way of doing the business. So this is a potential hurdle. And the other potential hurdle is something I was mentioning before, creating expectations that are so high that you think that everything is going to be solved by the passport. And by doing that, you're clogging the system and increasing the chances of failure. So it will be important for us to communicate to the state authorities, but even within the Commission itself, that we have to, like a baby, we start crawling at the beginning, and then with time we register them for the primary school, the secondary school, and then we get to university. You cannot register a baby of 3 years to university. That would fail. So, and at the beginning, it will be, as we said before, trial and error. And then I think in the medium terms, probably within 10 years, checking the passport will be something that we do even as an unconscious competence. Like today, we check our social media or things like that. We become just part of the things that we do without thinking.
Yes, so yeah, you already answered my next question, which is, within the next 5 years, still crawling, and then in 10 years, at some point, will be a commodity to have a digital product passport per product. So I think that brings us to our leave statement. Is there something that you want the listener to hear from you? What's your most important statement about the DPP?
My statement is that, as I said, it is a win-win. It's a great opportunity that we have. We have to get there and discuss it with an open mind and not coming to defend a fixed pre-idea or competence that we have. If we make it a co-creation exercise, all the different stakeholders, we will really be able to create something that can change certain dynamics of our markets, improving the overall sustainability of our economy.
Super. Thank you so much, Michele, for this interview today. I hope to talk to you again soon.
My pleasure, Susanne. Bye-bye.